We still do 7 NUFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support NUFC Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email John at nufcmatters.com to arrange today. A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. Go to their website, skipsandbins.com, email inquiries at skipsandbins.com, or telephone 0800 25 45 25 3, easy contract free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. Go to their website, mrvickies.co.uk, email info@mrvickies.co.uk, or telephone 01768 210 102. Thanks to United Group Travel. Go to their website, unitedgrouptravel.com, email info@unitedgrouptravel.com, or phone 01670 632 460, or mobile 0791 666 4174. They're a local company from Morpeth, and there are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. Big thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the video side of things. And if you want to subscribe to the channel, hit the subscribe button under the video. Click the thumb up to like the video and click share to your social media. If you want to help the channel financially, you can pay a one-off £25 fee. You get a cup, a scarf, a pen and a membership card and entry into the NUFC Matters monthly draw. Email John at nufcmatters.com for more details, or if you've got a smartphone, scan the QR code now and it takes you straight to the membership pack. We also support the food bank on this channel. Go to nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk and you'll find the matchday bucket. You can make a donation virtually today. You can also find us on iTunes, Spotify and other podcast providers. We also do events during the year. NUFC Matters Live will be at the O2 City Hall on Friday the 2nd of August for an evening with Rob Lee, one night in Antwerp. Tickets start at £15 and you can get them from ticketmaster.co.uk. An evening with the entertainers takes place on Friday the 24th of January 2025 at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House in Newcastle. Telephone 0844 249 1000 or visit the website tynetheatreandoperahouse.uk to buy tickets today. You can also catch me on the North East Footy Breakfast Show live on Toon Radio weekdays 7 till 9 a.m. on DAB, smart speakers and the toonuk.com.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true.
Good morning. Welcome to NUFC Matters. It's a live Q&A with me, Steve Wraith, and we will be talking about anything that you want to talk about today. Could be Newcastle United, could be something you want to know. Could be something to do with the news. Who knows? Could be you might want to just discuss your Mother's Day plans. But no match today for Newcastle. We play Monday night, of course, and it's away to Chelsea live on Sky. We will be doing a live watch along on the channel. So yeah. Get your questions in. I'll be on till about 9:50 this morning. Going to spend a bit of time with the family today and looking forward to it. And just as I start the show, just watching Anthony Joshua dispatch Ngannou in the second round. For those of you who
have had a chance to see it. Comprehensive job by Joshua, but let's face it, he should be beating somebody who's only had 2 professional fights, and sets up the Usyk against Fury fight now, and the winner of that, Joshua, will hope to fight him. But yeah, I'm not going to go overboard about Joshua's performance. He did what he had to do. He put somebody on his backside who really should be putting on his backside. He's got an opportunity now to put himself back in contention to win the world heavyweight title. But believe you me, if he fights Usyk or if he fights Fury, I genuinely can't see him winning. Stephen Kennedy, thank you, mate. Good morning. You've got your first question in. He says, Steve, do you think the hostility we are getting from the Premier League and football fans all over the country, as well as referees, is down to human rights, or the whole just pure jealousy? It's getting tiring now. Stephen, we discussed this on this platform week after week, month after month, and yes, year after year. I think it's just, it's a negativity towards the Saudi involvement in world sport. And it's weird because I find myself in a little bit of a quandary. I'm delighted that we had the takeover at Newcastle. I'm delighted that the Saudis came and put their money where their mouth was, along with Jamie Rubin and Amanda and Mirdad. 2 years in, so far so good, in a lot of ways. Still very disappointed as to where that things are going, off the pitch with regards to ticketing and, the fans advisory board, etc. I think there's a few things that could be massively improved, but Rome wasn't built in a day is the message that I've often put out, when I've had a chat on the different shows. But with boxing, and that's why I mentioned boxing after seeing your question, I don't like the Saudi takeover of boxing. I think we've lost something. The Las Vegas nights were huge. There were big nights. There were there were star-studded nights. It was great to see. It was great to see the stars from around the world sitting at ringside. And I know last night we saw Jose Mourinho, Cristiano Ronaldo, but it's just not the same. The atmosphere is not the same, and you could hear people singing Anthony Joshua's name, but it sounded like a handful of people. The atmosphere was terrible, and genuinely speaking, if that's the future of boxing, it's just not for me. I think we've lost something, and I get it. The Saudis are ploughing millions and millions of pounds into the sport, but at what cost? And this is another big fight, which, let's face it, Ngannou against Joshua should have been at Wembley. It should have been in the UK. It shouldn't have been, in a foreign country for me like that. Vegas is such a special atmosphere. The American audience and the English audience is what's got boxing through. And I think this really comes off the back of what's happened for me in the sport. It's been on a downward spiral. And now we're seeing my favorite fighter, Mike Tyson, fighting a YouTuber. Has the sport really come to this? It's embarrassing. So you can see why I'm in a quandary, Stephen. The hostility against Newcastle in football is because they fear, I guess, football fears that Newcastle will become the best team in the world, and I guess there are obstacles being put in the way of Newcastle becoming, achieving their goal. It's as simple as that. So, yeah, it's. I don't think it's down to jealousy. I just think it's, and I don't think it's specifically down to human rights. I just think it's just down to the fact that they're worried and they're scared about what could happen if the Saudis are allowed to use their financial influence. But that fight again, as the punch is just getting shown on TV again. He knocked him down 3 times, and so he should. This guy's a great fighter, but in a different discipline. But boxing isn't his style. And credit to Ben Davison and good friend of mine, Lee Wiley, who's trained Anthony Joshua at the gym with a whole host of other people, conditioning, etc. They've got him into great shape. It'll be interesting to see what happens with him. But the question that you asked, Stephen, about football, I don't think it's down to jealousy. I think they're worried. I think they're really, really worried about Newcastle's Newcastle's potential dominance should the the full finance that the PIF can put towards Newcastle United, if it was to be released and allowed to happen, I think nobody would be able to stop us. Stephen says, morning everyone. Hey Steve, just watched the Night Shift video again. It's great. Yeah, you're talking about Bruce Springsteen, aren't you? Yeah, the Bruce Springsteen. I saw him twice last year in concert. I saw him in Murrayfield in Scotland, and then I went down to Hyde Park and saw him in Hyde Park, and I will be seeing him again this year. But yeah, he's just got such a great back catalogue himself. But for him to do that Night Shift song is quite unique. And if you haven't seen it, just type in Bruce Springsteen Night Shift and give it a watch. It's well worth watching. Absolutely fantastic. Dave, what a punch that was from Joshua. Yeah, I mean, he caught him 3 times flush, and he put the kid to sleep, didn't he? There's something about Joshua, and as I say, this isn't just football, so forgive us if we do spiral off into different subjects on the morning. But for me, I don't like the way Joshua is these days off camera. There's an arrogance there, and I just don't like it. He wasn't like that in the early days. I think there's a lot changed about Anthony Joshua, and it's just something I just don't like. I've worked with him a few times. I did the undercard for his very first show in Newcastle, and he was a lovely guy. He'd just become British champion then, and watched him climb up the tree. I did, so I've done 3 talk-ins with him over the years in the Northeast, but gradually I've seen him change. So yeah, I was an AJ fan, but I'm more of a Fury fan these days. I guess you have to have one side or the other. But yeah, I don't know. There's something about AJ that I'm not keen on these days. Gary, good morning, mate. Steve, given that the Premier League haven't changed the FFP PSR rules to mirror UEFA and their 70% maximum spend of turnover, are we focusing too much attention on the Premier League when we should be focusing on UEFA? I mean, that's a good question. It's just so confusing, Gary. I think for ordinary fans like ourselves, it's so confusing. If we find it confusing, God knows what the football clubs, people at the football clubs feel like when they're having to deal with this week to week, day to day. It's such a strange situation that we find ourselves in. I mean, look at the situation that's developing in the Championship at the moment. Leicester City, leading the division, albeit only by a few points now compared to where they were 6-7 weeks ago, are facing this potential of being promoted into the Premier League and then being deducted points because they fell foul of FFP when they were in the Premier League. I mean, this is ludicrous. So we all know how difficult it is to go from the Championship to the Premier League in the first place. It takes you a season to find your feet, and the old adage of finishing 4th bottom is an achievement. Is true. But can you imagine being a team that comes up into the Premier League and then automatically you're deducted 6 points? Let's say 6 points, because that's what Everton have now after having their appeal heard and managing to claw back 4. Let's say that they have 6 points removed from their total to start with. You're already starting on the back foot. And then imagine, the fixture list isn't kind to you, and you end up getting, I don't know, Manchester City and Liverpool and Arsenal in your first 4 or 5 games. You could find yourself adrift by 10 points and you're not out of August. I mean, this really does need looking at. The Everton situation is absolutely crazy. To have 10 points deducted, that should have been that. But they've shown now that, they won't stick to what they've said. So now we're down to 6 points. But yet they've still got something else, hanging over them. They've got another potential fine hanging over them. So yeah, I think the whole system needs addressing. And I think we need to keep our eyes on the Premier League, because certainly the Premier League didn't want our takeover. But I also think we need to keep our eyes on UEFA as well. So yeah, it's a double barrel question, but it's a double barreled answer from me, Gary. I think that I think the Premier League, as I say, always need to be watched. I mean, Richard Masters was at St James's Park for the Wolves win, and obviously from our perspective, it's good to see. It's good to see that the Premier League, do go out and visit clubs, and that means that there's communication between them and us. But I just wouldn't trust Richard Masters as far as I could throw him. I mean, he was clearly against the takeover from the very beginning. So, yeah, I think we need to keep an eye on both of them, Gary. That would be my answer. Paul Charlton, good morning. SJP, Dave, good morning. The Saudi atmosphere just isn't the same. It's awful. It's awful. I mean, we've had about. I always have Sky News on in the background when I do the podcast, and that we're 11 minutes into the 9 o'clock headlines, and this is all we've had. And you've got various people's views, being spoken about. Anthony Crolla, George Groves, Dave Colwell, all of them having their say. And I've listened to some of them over the course of the last couple of hours, and this isn't the rebirth of Anthony Joshua. This is Anthony Joshua, who was fought somebody from a different discipline, who's a very good fighter at a different discipline, who has decided to turn to boxing and has been taught a lesson. And the guy's been revered as some kind of Drago from Rocky because he put Tyson Fury on the floor. And for me, this isn't the rebirth of AJ. And Sky are running this best heavyweight in the world ? This morning. He's not the best heavyweight in the world. He's far from it. He's been found out. He was caught out, not once, not twice, by an overhyped, an oversized cruiserweight in Usyk. Usyk's technically a better fighter, and Fury's a better fighter technically than AJ for me. So this isn't the rebirth. This is for me. This is the networks trying to con the public. This is them turning around and saying, "Look at this. We're going to have the great fight that we want," and it's not gonna happen for me. And when it should have happened 3 or 4 years ago. And it's basically got to the stage now where we're 3 or 4 years down the line. They're all older, and yeah, this isn't the rebirth of Anthony Joshua for me. It's it's just a way of getting this fight that everybody wants. And I think there's no surprise to see that Eddie Hearn now and Frank Warren are sitting side by side, and they're working together because it suits them. And it suits them because they're all getting a share of the Saudi money. And to see some of these people who've had rivalries from years back suddenly sitting around the same table and taking the same money, it's that tells you the reason we're now suddenly moving even quicker towards the big fight that we want. Obviously, Fury fighting Usyk has been put off not once but twice. That's coming up now in the course of the next 12 weeks, I think. And once we see that fight and the winner of that fight, then we'll imagine there's going to be a sit down and a negotiation between the Saudis, between Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren to get Joshua against the winner of that fight. But knockout chaos was what it was called last night, and I just thought it was, from what I've seen, it was a result which AJ had to get, and he did. The biggest disappointment was the Ball fight for me. Ball clearly won by a country mile, and was robbed of the title, and that in itself was corrupt. I switched off last night. I switched it off and thought I'll just catch up with this in the morning. I didn't want to waste my time, because I do feel the boxing is more corrupt now than it's ever been, and I think the public are being cheated, and it's just not enjoyable anymore. Gone are the days of a level playing field. And some probably say that boxing's always been bent, it's always been corrupt. People will point back to Sonny Liston versus Muhammad Ali, and say that was corrupt, or some of those fights in that division were corrupt. Maybe the mob was involved back in those days. But yeah, I think it's because it's even more obvious now. I just think it's even more obvious what goes on. And bearing in mind, I promoted I promoted pro boxing for 9 years, and controversial decisions do happen, and I'm convinced that it's deliberate. Okay, moving on with questions. Can't understand how late they were boxing. Yeah, I mean, it's not great, is it? It's not great, Dave, for the spectator. Sparky, good morning. Steve, what are your thoughts on Mike Tyson fighting Jake Paul? It's horrendous, mate. It's absolutely pathetic. I mean, Tyson was an idol of mine when I was younger, and despite the allegation and prison sentence that he served, I always felt that was a setup, and I always felt he was innocent. And he came back out, and he was never the same fighter again. Who would be after spending time incarcerated? But from my point of view, to see a legend of the boxing game's reputation tarnished for money is pathetic. Why on earth would he go down the Floyd Mayweather role of making money? I just don't understand it, Sparky. I hate it. I won't watch it. I didn't watch Mayweather against Conor McGregor. I watched one of the press conferences. I was intrigued enough to watch the press conference, but I had no interest in watching that fight. It's pathetic. Absolutely a waste of time. And anyone paying box office for that wants their head examined, for me. But yeah, it's pathetic. It's not a fight. It's not real. And this is playing to the younger market because it's earning money. And I understand why they do it, but yeah, it's not for me. It's not for me. It's not boxing. It's killing the game. It's killing the game, and it's not something I'll watch. John Ball, good morning, mate. I hope you're well. What do you think of Lascelles being given contract extension, and also the possibility of the same for Dummett and Richie? Is Richie really staying 10 more years? God, John, how crazy is this? Like, so yesterday I didn't have time to do the press conference review for Eddie Howe. I did listen to it before I did the Amigos last night, and when I heard him say that, it was Lee Ryder, wasn't it? He asked him about Lascelles, and his contract extension had been triggered. So it was a revelation, because he wasn't going to open up and tell anybody about it. It was a revelation that this had actually happened. And you could almost hear like a few sighs in the press room. But is it bad news that Lascelles has got an extension? No, if he's going to be part of the squad. If he's just going to be part of the squad, and he's going to, I mean, he's proved to be useful this year. He's clearly beneficial in the dressing room. But we can't say that about everybody. We can't continue to give playing contracts to Dummett and Richie. Dummett's he's played Manchester United away this season. Probably been involved in the matchday squad a couple of times. Matt Ritchie's been involved in the matchday squad countless times. Scored a crucial goal, it has to be said, this season. But overall, if we're going to continue to give these players contracts, that means that we're still not going to be bringing in the players that that we all hoped when this takeover went through, because of and the constantly point towards FFP is the reason that we're not going to be able to do the business. I mean, for me, this summer should see Newcastle unleash the purse strings again. We are all expecting Newcastle to spend, I would imagine, in excess of at least £200 million this summer, at the very least, because we spent nothing in January. And we're all pointing towards the fact that we've now signed a deal with Adidas and we've signed a deal with Seller. Now, money has come into the club. Money will continue to come into the club. But Newcastle have made profits and turnover on the corporate side of things. We've also had a Champions League run. Now, which year that comes into, I'm not sure. But one would imagine Newcastle will have, a big sack full of money to spend in January. So I guess it depends on who they sign and what positions they sign, John. I think we all agree that there are a couple of positions in this squad that are a priority. I mean, we need somebody who is going to be able to score goals and give Callum Wilson and Alexander Isak some competition next year if Wilson indeed stays. I think we all agree that we're going to need at least a central defensive midfielder, and probably a left back and a winger, and then you're going to be looking towards your goalkeeper and your centre halves. You know, so there's, you know, there is plenty of improvement needed in the squad, and you know, there's going to need to be some wheeling and dealing. There's going to be players go out. You would imagine that Ryan Fraser's on his way. You would imagine that Henrik's away, and you would imagine that Isaac Hayden should go. So there's three players at the very least who will go. Potentially Gillespie as well. But yeah, I mean, it's just bizarre, isn't it? I mean, you would never have imagined going on this journey that, you know, coming into your third year of ownership, that you would still have Lascelles, Dummett, and Ritchie as part of your team, and that it is a head scratcher. It really is. But I've said it before, and I'll say it again about Ritchie. He's got that kind of personality. You could imagine him being a coach and staying at Newcastle. I think there'll be big movement. I think there'll be a player goes out. I would not be surprised if we lose somebody like Trippier because of the noise that was around him in the winter window. I'll be very surprised if he doesn't move in the summer. Clearly, you know, he's coming up to the last contract of his career. He wants it to be a good one, and unless Newcastle's going to offer some huge money to him, I would imagine he would move on with Newcastle's blessing. But yeah, plenty food for thought, mate. Gary says, is Joshua a bit like Bruno, a bit robotic, too much muscle mass, which causes the body to tire early? I've always thought he was like Bruno. I think he's more talented than Frank, and certainly a bit more skill and a bit more know-how. I would just question how serious he is about boxing, Gary, you know, and maybe too many outside influences, maybe some wrong advice. I always felt that he was manufactured by Matchroom. I felt that he was a bit like like a Frankenstein project, which had its flaws, and I always felt that he was, you know, his opponents in his early days, and I suppose many people would say, well, this is the case for most heavyweights, but they were handpicked, and there was never really any competition, and you know, he's done incredibly well, but I just question maybe his attitude, and maybe that's what's let him down, and maybe he's got his attitude right now, you know, but we won't know whether he's got his attitude right until we see him again in the ring against either Usyk or Fury. But very, very similar to Frank Bruno, Gary. There's no doubt about that. You wouldn't trust Marston either. No, me neither. If the Mackems' bad run continues, they'll be flirting with relegation, only 10 points of it. Yeah, obviously I do the Northeast Footy Breakfast show, Stephen, and Ted, the Mackem, and Rye, the Borough fan, have both been getting a bit nervous. Great win for Borough midweek, as you know, giving them a little bit of breathing space. They're now level with Sunderland. But yeah, I mean that championship, I've paid more attention to the championship than I would normally do, because I'm doing the Northeast Footy Breakfast show, and I've got to keep my eyes on it so that I know what I'm talking about. But it's been incredibly tight, that division, and yeah, I mean, anybody could go on a bad run and end up in the relegation zone. But I think when you look at the bottom of the table, at this moment in time, I think your bottom three are almost guaranteed now. I think I think it's going to be tight as to who finishes. You know, it's going to be between Huddersfield, Stoke, and Sheffield Wednesday. I mean, Birmingham could get dragged back in. I've still got a lot of hope in Mowbray being able to get them out of that position. QPR have put a little run of form together, but it just takes one. Just takes one team to put a run of form together. Sheffield Wednesday are doing it at the moment. They look dead and buried, so they might come out. But I think up 11 and 12, 47 points. I think Sunderland and Borough are probably safe. But you're right. One of them could go on a catastrophic run, but it would need to be catastrophic. And I think both teams have got. I think both teams have got a bit in the tank, and I think they probably could get out of it. You know. David McLeod, good morning. He says, I personally think the FFP rules need to be addressed. Club debt should be counted. It shouldn't be right that clubs carry $1 billion worth of debt and get treated the same way as clubs with virtually none. That's a great point, David. I mean, we know that Manchester United, Chelsea, there's, two teams that have been the so-called Big Six for many years, are both in chronic debt. And yeah, that should be the case, but they're the Big Six, aren't they? They are the so-called Big Six, and the rules are quite obviously set up to protect the Big Six, and that's the reason that these people get away with it. So I would agree, but it doesn't look as if that's going to happen. Question from Derek Sharp: if the club cannot secure a stadium plan in the town centre, where would you be happy to go? I've always said Hunters Moor could be an area to build a massive training centre and stadium. Good question, Derek. Good morning. I wouldn't be adverse to doing it on the quayside if it would need infrastructure in place, road infrastructure, if it was going to be on the quayside where the arena site, with that being flattened, and obviously the new arena going up in Gateshead on the opposite side. I would be more akin to have it there. I'd love to have it on the town moor, where the Hoppins usually goes. I think up there would be the perfect place. But would people like Alan Shearer, who are allowed to graze their cows on there, would they be up for that? Would the freemen of the city allow it? But I think that's a perfect area. You've got so much space for development, and Newcastle could play at St James's Park, continue playing at St James's Park until the stadium was built. Short term, do we extend? Do they spend however many millions of pounds it costs to build 7,500 on the Gallagher? Just so they can increase the capacity for a short term stay. Potentially, yes. But I think they want a new stadium. I think everything's been pushed towards a new stadium. I've heard rumours that there are going to be more corporate areas, in the ground next year. That potentially some of the areas that are currently housed by season ticket holders. And I've heard a rumour about the 1892 club. I stress it's a rumour that could be a new kind of corporate area next season, which would mean an increased price, which would mean that people who can't afford it would be displaced. So I think the club will eventually impress on us or show us that the only way that we can get people in at a value price is by building a new stadium. So I think everything will work towards that, Derek. But yeah, my preferred choice would be to stay at St James's Park. Second choice would be the quayside on the arena site. Third choice would be the town moor, if they could build on the town moor. So it's three. That's my top three. I'd love to stay at the current site. Maybe it's just if you could extend and encroach on Lees's Park, that would be fantastic. But I'd hate to lose any of our supporters short term. I would hate anybody to say, well, you're not going to be able to have your seat this season whilst we build a new stand. I would hate that. It would be awful. Dave says, what's happened about the new training ground? Gone very quiet. I think everything's focused on the feasibility study for the actual ground. I mean, they may incorporate training facilities at a new ground. I mean, look at what Man City do. With their, look what Man City did with their development. It may well be like that. Newcastle may well look at following in their footsteps and doing something similar to that. Les, totally agree, David, unless everyone is allowed to carry 1 billion in debt. Bemused me how a club with such excessive debts can be truly deemed sustainable. Yeah, it's a good point, Les. It's a good point. Morning, Alan. Mourinho was front and centre. One of the first escorted to the ring by Saudi escorts to congratulate AJ. Seems Saudi hold him in high esteem. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that didn't go unnoticed, did it? And you just wonder that, is he already being put front and centre and potentially going to be showcased as the next the next manager of Newcastle when Eddie Howe decides to leave or is pushed. But that didn't go unnoticed with me either, Alan. I've got to be honest. A couple of my mates look after Tyson Fury. I've people who I've done a lot of work with in the Northeast over the years, and they were front and center last night again as well. And yeah, I've asked them a couple of times about the plans for Salah and what their plans are, and they've given me a few updates. But yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. Mourinho certainly loved by the Saudi Arabians. That's 100% sure. Ball 100% by 4 or 5 rounds. He was like a wasp in his opponent's underpants. Alan, that's a great analogy, and 100%, mate, you're right. Used to love the US State Fair boxing you could watch on satellite, seeing boxers come over the board at the box. Great pure boxing. Yeah, Stephen, they don't, it's gone. The sport is gone as we knew it, and it's so disappointing. Really, really disappointing to see how far back we're going now, and away from what boxing should be. And I just, social media enhances poor decisions, and I think my timeline before I went to sleep last night was just full of annoyed boxing fans again, about that Ball decision. I actually gave Ball a few shots on shows that I did down in London, and cracking lad, great fighter, and I just hope that he eventually gets the justice he deserves in the sport. But I've seen 1 or 2 people up here who should have been given at least the opportunity to fight for a world title fight, but because of boxing politics, were just moved from pillar to post and never got the opportunity. And it's why I fell out of love with the sport. It's just becoming a farce, and it's just not enjoyable. How many do you think will leave in the summer? Dear me out, Tom. It's $1 million question, that, isn't it? It's when you look at the players who are out on loan. I've mentioned obviously Ryan Fraser. He's essentially at Southampton. He's sidelined at the moment with a knee injury, but Southampton are keen on signing him. So he's going to go. Jeff Hendrick finds himself in a rather bizarre position at the moment. He's at Sheffield Wednesday, but he's exiled from the Owls first team squad. Why? It hasn't been announced, but you would imagine that he will go. Obviously, we've got Yankuba Minteh, who it sounds as if is going to go back out on loan, so he will be staying, of course. He's a protege and somebody for the future, although he knows how to score goals. Potentially, he might be looked at as a squad member next year. Maybe he's on the right-hand side of midfield. Harrison Ashby, remember him? Well, he's at Swansea City. And again, he will be staying with us, you would think, as will Michael Ndweni, who's at Annan Athletic. Dylan Stevenson, not sure whether there's a future for Dylan at the club. He's at South Shields at the moment. And Matty Bondswell is at Newport County. Jamal Lewis, not sure if he's got 1 more year left on his contract. I know Eddie Howe waxed lyrical about him when he first came in, but then who doesn't Eddie Howe wax lyrical about? I really can't see him staying. And Isaac Hayden, of course, now is at Queen's Park Rangers. The other player who's out on loan at the minute as well is Rodrigo Vilca, which again there's a few question marks over him. And Garen Kwal, I think I mentioned him before, didn't I? He's at Volendam, but things have gone completely pear-shaped there because of the people who brought him to the club have all been ousted out of the club, and he's now in limbo, not getting a game. But I would imagine that there's going to be at least 3 or 4 who leave, in the summer. But out of those 3 or 4 are going to be people who are probably going to clear 50 grand a week in wages. So if we can get rid of 3 or 4 of them, there's 200 grand a week cleared up straight away. So yeah, I would say 3 or 4, Tom, and potentially a surprise, maybe a Trippier. David, good morning. The trip to Dundee was great, mate. It was the second time I'd been. I went up there to film a couple of years ago. It's a lovely place, lovely part of the world. Again, didn't see a great deal of it. But yeah, we had a great night with Nobby Solano up there. Absolutely fantastic, mate. And yeah, we will definitely be back. The organiser's already been back in touch about potentially doing another one. I'm expecting Wilson to leave, possibly Miggy, maybe back to the MLS, possible 30 million for both. Yeah, Miggy was, Miggy was nailed on to go to Saudi, but he didn't want to go. So if a player doesn't want to go, I guess you've got problems. Wilson, I'm not so sure. Wilson's a strange one, isn't it? But Trippier as well. Yeah, I think Trippier's. Trippier will want one last contract, and unless he gets the money here, I think he'll be away. But Wilson, yeah, I mean, there's been plenty of rumours and stories about him, but if you sell Wilson, you need at least another 2 coming back in, 100%. Just finished Here to Compete book. Do you think any of books will come out soon? Just Here to Compete. Who wrote that book again? Just Here to Compete. You'll have to remind us, Tom. I'm not sure who that was. There was a story going round about Solano missing out on a coach role at Newcastle due to computers, whatever that means. Do you know if this is true? I haven't spoken to Nobby about that, mate. I saw the story reported by Craig Hope, but from Nobby's perspective, Nobby's a great coach, and Nobby should have the opportunity to coach at Newcastle United for me. And I think that I think what Craig put in his article was pretty good in the sense that looking forward to seeing a MacBook Pro score a header at the back post. I mean, coaching's about coaching; it's not about computers. So if that story is true, then it's ludicrous. Townmoor for me, says Sean. Yeah, I would agree, mate. I think it would be good down there. Plenty of room for development as well, but I'm not sure what the rules and regs are around that. The naming right for St James's, the training ground seems to have gone quiet. Any news, Steve? No, nothing on that at all, Gary. And of course, Mitch and Stu are the guys who can usually come forward with at least some kind of pointer towards that. I know that Mitch has seen the new strips designs. We haven't seen them, but he's seen them because obviously, people who he knows in the businesses that he works with. And he says they're good, the new Adidas strips. But yeah, nothing on the training ground and nothing on the naming rights. But as I said earlier, Gary, I think the training ground is on the back burner with the feasibility study for the ground, because the training ground that they're training at the moment, I think, is suitable. And they've made a few adjustments to it, and maybe that's gone to the back of the pecking order with regards to development of it. As for sponsorship of that or naming rights for St James's, maybe that's something that will come into the next financial year. But I guess it all comes down to FFP. The land down by the arena will be contaminated from the lead works, so any building would need surveyed and cleaned before any buildings erected. Good knowledge, David. Thanks for that. Steve, who do you think Joshua will fight next? Well, he's going to fight Fury or Usyk. He'll fight the winner, Tom. It's as simple as that. And I don't think he'd win either of those fights, despite the way that he got rid of that guy last night. Hi Steve, are you a Star Trek fan? If so, what is your favorite series and captain? Mine is The Next Generation and Patrick Stewart as Picard. JW, good question. I prefer good old Captain Kirk on the Starship Enterprise, I'm afraid. Captain Pike before that, of course. But yeah, I've got to be honest, I do prefer Captain Kirk, and I think that's just because it's the original. As most people on here know, I'm a big Blake 7 fan, and I prefer Blake 7 to Star Trek any day of the week. The characters and the script writing in those, I think, were far superior to some of the Star Treks that I've watched. But yeah, Captain Kirk for me all day, mate. Absolutely nailed on. And some great stories. The Trouble with Tribbles, always remember that. The Menagerie is a great story. It was a 2-part of that, I think. But yeah, I've watched them all many times, and they still get reruns on TV. But yeah, Blake 7. I listen to podcasts about Blake 7 quite a bit when I'm out walking, and I'm going to my very first Blake 7 con event this year. So good opportunity to go and meet people who've got a similar kind of interest to Blake 7 to me. What happened about the ghost hunt? It just got put off, Dave. Basically John Justice Allen, as you know, he wasn't well last year, so we want him to be involved. It will happen, but it'll probably be this year. There was no rush on it, no definite, but it's Probably going to do it this year, mate, but I'll keep you posted. Jamal Lewis contract till 2025 in the summer. Thanks. Hendrik out of contract, 55 grand a week. Yeah, well, that's good for us, isn't it? No selfies with Desperate Dan when I was in Dundee. No, didn't have time, mate. Didn't have time. Oh yes, Pete Graves' book. Yeah, that's right. The third kid made me wee a little bit with excitement. Yes, I thought it did. I remember you saying that, Mitch. It's absolutely fantastic to hear that they're good, because I trust you. You were a man of style with strips, mate. So I know for a fact that these strips will be the dogs. So yeah, and you know what? For the first time this season, I actually went and bought all 3 strips. I didn't go to a Thai representative who can send you the strips for slightly cheaper with all the printing on. I went and bought them at the club shop. I even bought the tracksuit. It's the first time I've done anything like that since I was in my bloody teens. So I'm over the moon that strips are getting better. Castoria's strips were good this season as well. I like them, and got a couple of holidays planned this year, so I will be wearing them with pride on my foreign sojourns. Ian, a new ground's inevitable. It's not a bad thing, peeps. You're right, Ian. Good morning, mate. Hope you're well. Hope you have a good day. Let's asking if it's green. St. James's, it's legends. It's time for a new era and new legends, says Ian. Yeah, I've heard a few people say that, and people saying we've never won anything at this ground. People think the Gypsies curse is at St. James's and not just surrounding the football club. I'm not against it. I'd be against it if we were going to end up with something like the Stadium of Light or the Riverside, because they are awful stadiums. If it's something like Tottenham's ground or Man City's ground, I'll be really happy. It's not the be all and end all, and if it's going to help the club progress, then I would say yes. And I haven't been manipulated by the club. I've got my own mind and I make my own decision. But yeah, I think I don't think it'll take persuading if people think it's going to lead to bigger and better days. That I think a lot of people will go for it, but I think they will try hard to keep it St. James's Park. I've got no doubt about it. Tom says, do you think the Premier League will do something with our daft kickoff times? Yes, Tom, I do. I think they'll make them bloody worse. I don't think we're actually gonna get what we want. We'll always be at the behest of advertisers. And like Mitch has said a few times on here, and Stu on the Professionals, which is back tomorrow at 6 o'clock. They've often said, a lot of it's about advertising to suit foreign countries and those who are watching it. And, I think we'll always be in this position. It's who plays the big bucks, and, when those ads will be best for those people who pay the big bucks. It's as simple as that. You were literally talking about a world-class, best of the best stadium. It's a no-brainer for me. Yeah, you're right, Ian. And he says he loves St. James's Park and all that. But going anywhere nice? I think we're going on the train, mate. We haven't decided yet, but we're going on the train. We're going to get to the station and pick a destination. That's what we're going to do. Maybe Scotland, maybe York, maybe London. But we're leaving in about 10-15 minutes and we'll be off on our travels. So it's a bit of a magical mystery to it today. Mozza says, regarding contamination at the arena land, Eddie Hope released a podcast this week. Oh, is this Tyneside Life? And confirmed the land is not common. Oh, dear me. He spoke to the helicopter pad owner and Holmes, England, but it's not big enough. Mozza, as much as I love you, I'm not a fan of Eddie Hope. I've got to be honest. I like the guy. I've met him, but a lot of it's speculation. A lot of it's hearsay, and a lot of it is opinion. And when I see people do things like this, I do cringe a bit. So I'm not being mega critical yet, but like, I just think sometimes when stuff's put out by certain podcasts, and I think Eddie's one of them, and it's my opinion, but a helicopter pad owner and a Holmes England guy isn't going to know whether land's contaminated or not. So I always beg to differ with these kind of things. And I'm just not having a go at you, Mozza. I just think sometimes you should leave things to people who know what they're talking about. And my mind won't be, you know, I won't believe stuff that comes from certain people. And I'm afraid that I've seen a few things that guy's put out, and he went on a sabbatical. I thought he wasn't doing anything else about Newcastle. Suddenly he's back again. Yeah, I'll leave it there, Muzzer. You get the point. I'm sworn to secrecy, but I'm sure all three will go down well. I think some of the variables in Man U's 3 kits this season, we've got proper unique designs, and they're already working on the ones after them. Thanks, Mitch. That's great stuff. Hope they're not like that awful Arsenal away kit or the Wolves kit from last week. Nothing outrageous, no, says Mitch. Is it the messing about with the kickoff times that's resulted in less away days for you? That is what made it difficult for me when I had my season ticket traveling 500 miles. 100%, David. But and plus, because I don't do 9 to 5. Obviously, I do the Northeast Footy Brekkie show, but that doesn't stop me doing other stuff. I still act, I still write, and I'm still, you know, I still get out and do my exercise. I have to fit meetings in around all of that. I still do events. I don't live a 9 to 5 life. So for me personally, yeah, kickoff times have got to be of a certain time, and I've got to pick and choose. So, you know, it's unfortunate. A couple of years ago, I managed to get to all bar 2 in a season with Holly and her dad, which was fantastic. Her dad was driving, made it slightly easier. You know, we split the petrol money and we had a great laugh. But yeah, I mean, you know, since then, not being able to get as many, but just the way it is, c'est la vie, you know. Jules, good morning. Ooh, I love York. Edinburgh was a lovely ride from Newcastle too. Yeah, they're great. They're really good. We're just dead lucky where we live, Jules. That I literally can get on a train, go to Edinburgh, be there in an hour and a half, go to Glasgow and be there in a couple of hours, go to York and be there in an hour, be in Durham in 20 minutes, or can be in King's Cross in London in 2 hours 50. So, you know, it spoiled for choice, Jules, and, you know, great to be able to get out and do stuff like that. Regarding the new ground, the Saudis don't do half measures. Just look at their yachts and everything else. It's always the best of the best. David, you're right, mate. You're right. Mozza, yeah, I know, Steve, but I had to put it out there. No, I appreciate that. Thanks for putting that in. Ian's still freezing, he says. I hope you warm up, mate. And it's never good, says Mozza. Doncaster's a nice place. Yeah, I've been to Doncaster a few times, Tom. Peterborough is really good. You get the opportunity to get out on the train. Peterborough on the East Coast Main Line as well. It's nothing flash. It's nothing out of the ordinary, but it's somewhere, you know, you go there, you get there in 2 hours and go and have a walk around. Berwick's the same. If you're up for going for a walk, and all you need is a few, you know, a few restaurants to choose from, a couple of nice boozers, something of historical interest, and, you know, everywhere's got a church, everywhere's got a museum, everywhere's got something to do. So, you know, it's best just to go out and explore. You know what I mean? You don't just have to do everything on your own doorstep. You know, get out, get out and explore. Not wishing the year away, but can't wait for the end of season party. It's going to be great, Jules. And this one, out of all of them, is probably going to be the best yet. What we're going to do, I'll let you in on the big secret, I guess, is we're going to record this as a live podcast. So you're going to play your part as the live audience. But we're going to have, obviously, the long sounds on. We're going to have Superman and Gibbo. We're going to have George on. So you're going to have the chance to ask the questions. But we're going to film it, and then it's going to be put out as a podcast. It's, if you think of TFI Friday, if you think of the Tube, if you think of the Word, it's going to be along those lines. So, you know, nobody's done that. That's what we're going to do, and it's going to be a big celebration. And hopefully you'll enjoy it. A couple of special guests as well, and you know, we're going to interview these people as well, and going to be quite a few people here from the fans forum, 1 or 2 people from from the show as well. So a few surprises, but we are going to record it, and it's going to be put out. And if it's a success, then what we'll do is we'll do it again for another charity. But this one with this one from our perspective is going to be for Dementia Matters, a charity which I'm working with this year, and we are going to hopefully raise, you know, a lot of money for going to raise a lot of money for Dementia Matters on the night. Even if you can't come, go to Newcastle Legends or go to nufcmatters.com and please buy a ticket. It's only a tenner. And we're also going to give away a copy of the book, the Dementia Matters book. So please get yourselves along. It should be good. It's a good chance Stu and I'll be over too, mate. We've been invited to a wedding that weekend, so why the hell not? Yeah, I know the wedding. The wedding's on the same day, I think, but you never know. If you can get along at some point, that would be fantastic. Dave says, time you went, Steve. You'll miss your train. Good point, mate. It's a long old trip, but it's always worth it. Great, as always, to have a chat with you. 10 to 10, I did say I'd finish now. Thanks for your questions. Thanks for your interest. And I will be back at 6 o'clock tomorrow with Mitch and Stu. Steve's Angels in the house. Mother, Les and Jules. Looking forward to it, Yano. Take care and have a good day, whatever you choose to do. And see you tomorrow night, 6 o'clock with the lads. Bye-bye.